the senator from Wisconsin.
Dr. Lackey, have you in Texas put any kind of cost estimate on what it did cost your public health system to treat those 3 patients?
So I can partially answer that question. Sorry, I can partially answer that question. If I look at the cost that we incurred as a state agency, including time of my staff, the cost to do the decontamination, waste control, transportation, et cetera, that's about $1 million. The monitoring of the individuals that have come back from overseas, that cost right now is a little shy of $20,000 right now. The cost that Presbyterian incurred, I cannot tell you what that number is.
But the cost has been over $1 million for a couple patients. Dr. Frieden, yes. Do you have any cost estimate of what it costs to cure some of these heroes? I mean, what does it cost?
The care of patients with Ebola can be quite expensive because it requires intensive care. It needs to be done in a place where you may have to actually not admit other patients.
Do you have a number, though? I got
no, nothing other than what I've read in the media.
Hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per case, correct? What is, in terms of the incubation period, at what point, how many days does it take to exhibit a fever?
The incubation period is between 2 and 21 days after exposure until illness, usually around 8 to 10 or 12 days.
So in general, somebody could be infected and then really not exhibit any signs of illness or fever for about 8 days.
That's correct.
It's a real possibility. What is the current projections in terms of this outbreak as it progresses? You know, right now I've got about 14,000 cases in my briefing packet here. I don't know how many there were when we first admitted to Mr. Duncan. What are we looking at 2, 3, 4 months down the road? Because we have some pretty scary numbers.
That will depend entirely on our response and how rapidly we intervene. Currently, we think there may be between 1,000 and 2,000 new cases per week in West Africa, but we've seen areas of West Africa achieve very rapid reductions when they implement a comprehensive strategy such as that we would be able to support through the emergency funding request.
So we had heard estimates of this thing growing exponentially to over 1 million people by 2015. Are we past that point? Are we getting a handle on this, that we're not looking at that kind of exponential growth?
In Liberia, we are no longer seeing exponential growth. I think that's a reflection of the proof of principle of the strategy. However, we are still seeing growth in Sierra Leone, and Guinea is a cautionary note because we've seen it come and go in waves whenever we've relaxed our efforts.
So it still is possible to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases with this current situation?
We don't think the projections from over the summer will come to pass. Those were projections of what would have happened if prior trends had continued with no intervention. There has been very effective intervention with USAID, ourselves, the global community, and most importantly, the countries and the communities most affected. So,
okay. Well, that is good news. My point being is if this really does grow either exponentially or geometrically, we're going to have a whole lot more cases throughout the world, in West Africa. When we had about 10 or 12,000 cases, one individual got into this country. And we're seeing the cost of just treating 1 or 2 cases in the millions of dollars. I don't know how many cases of Ebola would utterly overwhelm our healthcare system. So from my standpoint, I think the goal we should really have would be to keep Ebola out of the United States. Now, we obviously have to treat these heroes, these healthcare workers that are going down there, and nobody's talking about isolating West African nations, but we really ought to set as an achievable goal, let's not let it spread out of there. Let's keep it in West Africa. So, Mr. Kurlikowski, through our Customs and Border Patrol process here, through the airlines, we can identify 100% of people that have been in West Africa in the last 21 days, correct?
Probably not identify 100%, but we've come very close. We look for all the things.
Well, why wouldn't it be 100%? Because you have to fly here, right? I mean, and people have to have passports, and those things are stamped. Why can't it be 100%?
Well, there are people that can use broken travel, and we have to. That's why we have those secondary layered approach of looking for stamps, looking at their passport, asking them questions, what other countries they've traveled in.
But again, people will lie. So, I mean, we have to rely on documents and thorough evaluation of those documents to try and protect people from coming here, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, right now, was a little surprised your answer to Senator Coburn said that we are funneling 100% of people into those because it didn't sound like that from your testimony.
Well, he was specific about the people coming into the airports that we have that information on, and that's why in my opening statement I also mentioned that all of our ports, including sea and land ports, also have the information and also have the ability to do any screening.
So my point being is if we can screen, using passports, using stamps, understand that people, when they were in West Africa, at a pretty high percentage, 95 to 100%, in light of the fact that treating just one case of Ebola could be more than $1 million, why wouldn't we set the achievable goal of saying, let's not let people into America other than the healthcare workers? Why not control that and let the world know that you're not going to come into America until you've been out of West Africa for at least 21 days? I mean, wouldn't that be a reasonable restriction so that we don't overwhelm our healthcare system? Why wouldn't we do that?
So, Senator Johnson, I don't think I'm probably the best person to answer that from that medical viewpoint, but I do know a couple things that have been expressed. And one is that when we do a level of restriction and isolate those 3 particular countries, other countries may follow or very well.
Well, they already are doing that, are they not?
Other countries could follow our lead. We don't restrict.
And let me just interrupt. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Why would we want it to spread out of those 3 countries into any other country? Why don't we have a world effort to keep the disease in those 3 countries, flood resources, flood heroes to treat them, but why aren't we really taking a look at let's keep it isolated in those 3 countries? It makes no sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to the American public that we don't really double our efforts to keep it contained in those countries and get it stamped out in those countries. Don't let it spread.
Well, restricting or isolating those countries, I don't think, and has been explained to me, would be the best answer. The other is that I think it could drive people underground. You could easily leave any of those 3 countries without getting on an airplane and easily go somewhere else and surreptitiously or through deceit attempt then to enter the United States.
But why make it easier? Okay, I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
From one side of Wisconsin to another. And Senator Johnson, please.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lurie, you're with HHS. You're looking for about $3 billion of funding. How detailed is that request? I've got a sheet here. We've got about 5 different areas. I mean, how have you drilled down and just really detailed out that budget request? And I really, if you've got it in much greater detail, can you provide that just to my staff? I mean, is this pages and pages of detail, or is this a couple categories and we're kind of estimating we're going to throw $500,000 here, $500 million there?
Well, I have a couple pages even here of top line issues, and we would be more than happy to provide it to your staff. I think we've really gone through very carefully, largely because we all appreciate the need to both respond to this epidemic with urgency and speed, but also really be responsible stewards of our society's resources.
Great. So being an accountant, I'd like that detail. And Ms. Lindborg, the same from USAID and State Department, looks like it's about $2 billion. A question I do have is, I know we're sending, about 4,000 of our military personnel there. I see very little in terms of funding for the military. Who can really speak to the military's role in West Africa?
I can do that. They have funding that they reprogrammed from last year that was they notified and got approval to spend about $750 million. That's separate from this. President Obama mobilized the military to be a part of the response in mid-September when it became clear that the scale and size and the complexity really needed the unique capabilities of the U.S. military.
So do you know how much the military will spend on their efforts? Any estimate?
I don't know that we've got that final, but they expect to be within that envelope.
I believe in your testimony you were talking about what the role of the military would be. Can you describe that in greater detail?
Yes. So they've played a critical role of, first of all, providing engineering and logistics capabilities. They built a 25-bed medical unit in Monrovia that is specifically for healthcare workers.
Okay.
They have provided engineering capabilities and have built or will build a total of 10 Ebola treatment units. That's part of an overall.
And how many beds in each one of those treatment units?
So each of these are built initially. The plan is that they're built for about 10 to 20 initially with the possibility to scale up to 100. This is part of the need to be very modular.
Are they on the ground now? Do we have
They're-
4,000 members of the military in West Africa?
No, they don't currently anticipate that they will need all 4,000.
So how many are on the ground right now, and in which countries?
They're in Senegal and Liberia, and the exact figure changes because they flow capabilities in and out, and we can get
So
you that.
nobody in
from our
Guinea,
military
nobody in
friends.
Sierra Leone?
Correct.
Are they going to be coming in contact? Because I thought you said
No.
treatment, I thought you said something about treatment of patients. I misheard that?
We are supporting the USAID is funding the partners who are providing the management and the treatment inside the Ebola treatment units. Army personnel or military personnel will not come into any contact with what we call hot zones.
Who is planning the foreign medical worker plan, the logistics of that? How many medical professionals need to be surged into there and is it on a rotating basis, 30 days? I mean, can anybody
Yep.
speak to that plan?
Yeah, so you are exactly right. There's an enormous need for a pipeline of trained and equipped healthcare workers. This has been one of the logistical challenges. In addition to the medical unit that provides the confidence for healthcare workers that if they come in, they will get that American standard treatment, and that's for both Liberian and international healthcare workers. The military, U.S. military, has also stood up a training facility so that it can train up to 500 healthcare workers a week, so they have that special training.
In those countries?
In those countries. It's in Monrovia and outside of Monrovia. We work very closely with WHO, who runs a foreign medical team coordinating center. And those teams get deployed against the needs within these Ebola treatment units. Very importantly, the U.S. military is also helping with some of the critical transport of commodities and personnel. There's a base in Senegal that enables them to move from Senegal through the region with transport.
Okay, Dr. Frieden, just my last couple minutes here. I really want to ask some of those common sense questions that people just have on their minds. If we can get the answers to them, maybe we can alleviate some of the fears. I know protocol wasn't apparently followed, but specifically, how did those two nurses catch Ebola? Did they simply not have proper clothing? I mean, was their skin exposed? I mean, were they in, just at the very height of Mr. Duncan's illness and all kinds of medical waste and fluids and stuff? Can you tell us what happened there?
We don't know definitively how the infections occurred. We believe from the investigation and the evidence that it's likely that they were infected actually prior to Mr. Duncan's diagnosis from the 28th to the 30th of September when he was very ill. He had a lot of body fluids, a lot of diarrhea, a lot of vomiting, and they were caring for him with protective equipment that they were trying to beef up so that they would be safer, but in doing that, they may have inadvertently increased their risk. And that's why immediately we strengthened the level of safety and went to a new set of personal protective equipment guidelines. Two of the essential components of those guidelines are that healthcare workers practice and practice and practice so they're comfortable with doing, and that they're observed to put on and take off the equipment.
Can we talk a little bit about the survivability of the virus? We're talking about this really, because the burial practices in Africa, the virus is obviously present in those bodies, and it obviously survives. If it remains moist? Is that really all it takes, is just the virus to be in a moist environment, and it will continue to survive?
The virus cannot live indefinitely outside of the body, as far as we know, but it will depend on the environmental conditions. We know that it's produced more by people as they're sicker, but all of what we've seen in Africa has suggested that it takes direct contact with someone who's ill. Even one study we did showed that even family members who shared meals, lived in the same household with patients, if they didn't have direct contact, they did not become infected.
What's the theory how it jumps from animals to humans? Is that through a diet?
We don't know in particular. It's not been proven in Ebola. Our work has shown that in Marburg, a similar virus, bats are an important reservoir, and then contact hunting and cleaning bushmeat can bring people into contact with infected animals and their body fluids.
Quick question for Texas. We know Mr. Duncan got ill in a parking lot. What happened to the result of that illness?
What happened?
We heard it sat around for a couple days and then was just washed down a drain.
For the cleaning of the environment? Is that your question, sir?
Yeah, apparently he vomited in a parking lot.
There was, you know, we brought in a crew to do cleaning of the apartment. They did, went to several lengths to clean the apartment, clean all the environment around. You know, there was a contractor that came in to do all that cleaning.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.